Namaskaraha and welcome to our next session on the yogic life. So, as part of the Yoganishta Jeevanam, we've been talking about satsang, right? Having the company of sadhus. So, it has been said that in life, tyaja durjana samsargam, bhaja sadhu samagamam, kuru punyam ahoratram, smara nityam anityatam. त्यज दुर्जन संसर्गम भज साधु समागमम. So tyaja durjana samsargam means you have to renounce the company of durjana, right? Renounce the company of durjana. So we need to understand what is durjana. So durjana, so every human being has merits and demerits, right? There are merits and demerits in every human being. Like in some people, the merits will be more than the demerits, and there will be some remaining. If I subtract the demerits from the merits, there will be a remaining merit. And then there are people whose demerits are much more than their merits, and then they would end up in a net demerit, right? In terms of the papa and punya. So some people's punya will be more compared to the papa, and resultant will be a punyam, and some people the papa will be more than the punya, and then the resultant will be a papa. And there are other people whose punya is much more than the papa, and their net result will be a huge amount of punya, right? So supposing we say that a person, how do we know, how do we say that somebody is a durjana is a person who it is actually relative to my net result of papa and punya. How does it compare to the net result of somebody else, and how does that influence you, right? If somebody's papa is much more than their punya, and that papa is so predominating, when you just come in company of such a person, then automatically you will be pulled down. On the other hand, if you are in the company of sadhus, their punya will be much more than their papa, and also those people, the sadhus, we'll see who is a sadhu. So in those people's company, what happens is that we also get elevated. So we need to be very careful in terms of with whom we associate, right? So this durjana thing is not permanent thing. It keeps varying from man to man. It is a relative term in terms of how much of merits and demerits they have. So you have to avoid the company of a person who is a durjana for you, right? Whose resultant papa is more than the resultant punya, right? Such a person we have to avoid, because what happens is that, let's say that you've decided to go on the spiritual path and you're proceeding, right? Let's say that you're a beginner and you enter into the spiritual path and you just started in this, but you have not left the company of other people who are not interested in this. And if you keep associating with those people, then what happens is that you also get pulled down, right? Because those people don't have any interest. They're interested in material things. So if you keep associating with those people on a day-to-day basis, then there is a chance, it's very likely that you will also fall from your path. So when you choose the spiritual path, you have to be very careful in terms of who your sangha is. So it is very important to have satsanga, right? A sangha which will elevate your thoughts, elevate your mind, elevate your actions. So you need to have that kind of a sangha, and you need to give up the sangha of those people who actually do not elevate, degrade your mind, degrade your thoughts, degrade your actions, who essentially degrade you totally. We need to avoid the company of such people, durjana, right? So that doesn't mean that whatever you're learning over here, you will not share with other people, right? You will interact with those people if they are willing to learn about spirituality, if they are willing to engage in the yogic path. You will engage with them, you will elevate them, but you will not engage with them otherwise, because they will have a negative impact on you. So tyaja durjana samsargam. So what you should do, right? That means you have to tyaja, means you have to give up, avoid. Tyaja durjana samsargam, you have to avoid the company of durjana, that is, who is a durjana for you. And you have to associate with sadhus. Bhaja sadhu samagamam, you need to encourage the company of sadhus, right? So what does a sadhu mean? A sadhu, what does a sadhu mean? So is a sadhu, does a sadhu mean just a person who is wearing saffron cloth, is a question, right? That is how we generally understand, at least in India, that somebody is wearing saffron cloth, then saffron costume, then we think that person is a sadhu and we would like to associate with them, without knowing if they are really sadhu internally, right? So externally people may be wearing saffron costume or whatnot, but internally are they sadhu? That is what is the important question. So in India, those people who wear white costume, they are called as sadhus, and those people who use saffron costume, they are called as sannyasi. So for sannyasi it is saffron costume, and for sadhu it is white costume. That is how they have been identified. And for sadhus they use the suffix dasa after their name, like Ramadasa, Haridasa, like that, dasa for sadhus. They wear the white clothes. And then sannyasis, they wear the saffron clothes, and they have Ananda after their name, like Paramananda, Vivekananda, iti Ananda. So they have this word Ananda, Omkarananda, like that. They have Ananda after their name, at the end of their name. Then they are actually called as sannyasis. That is how it is actually a trend. They're wearing white clothes, they're sadhus, and if they're wearing saffron costume, they're sannyasis. So the question is, only a saffron costume or a white cloth does not make a man a sadhu or a sannyasi. Who is a sadhu? Sadhu is an inner sadhu. That is, you have to be sadhu internally. You may or may not use the saffron costume, but you have to be a sadhu. So who is a sadhu? Sadhu is that a sadhu is a person who does not give trouble to others. So for every human being, his life is very dear to him, right? Every person likes himself, likes his life is very dear to him. His personal life is very much very dear to him. He loves his personal life, and this is the rule, right? This is the rule for generally this is the rule, right? This is the characteristic of all living beings, that they like themselves. Those people who understand this sentiment of living beings, and they love others, right? They love others. I should not kill somebody, I should not trouble anybody, because for him his life is very much loved by him, right? As much as I love my life, the other person also loves his life, and I should not give any trouble to the other person, right? A person who thinks like that he doesn't trouble anybody, he realizes that every being is a manifestation of Paramapurusha, and he doesn't trouble anybody. Such a person is a sadhu. So one thing is, how do we know he's a sadhu? Is he doesn't trouble anybody. Second thing is, a sadhu must be a vegetarian, right? So if a person is eating meat, and he's eating fish, and he's eating all of those things, and then he's saying he's a sadhu, no, he's not a sadhu, right? A sadhu is a person who doesn't give trouble to anybody. So if he's killing an animal and eating it, then he is not a sadhu. That is, they are asadhus, right? They don't have the sentiment of being a sadhu. So if you are actually teaching about peace, right? You're teaching about peace, and then like on the contrary, you are actually going and killing animals so that you can get a meal. such a person is not a sadhu. Such a thing is not a proper thing for a sadhu going and killing an animal, right? That man who loves his own life, right? And the same way the animal also loves its own life. Every being loves its own life. Like chicken loves its own life, right? A goat loves its own life, right? So then that person who lacks this sentiment, this universal sentiment, this mamakara for everybody in this universe, such a person is not a sadhu. So fundamentally a sadhu should be a vegetarian, right? So now the question is, who is a sadhu for you? Who is a sadhu for you? Bhaja sadhu samagamam. So you have to encourage the companies of sadhu, right? A sadhu is, who is a sadhu for you means a sadhu is a person who elevates you, right? In all the strata of your life, he elevates you, uplifts you. He helps you on the physical, mental, and he helps you for your physical, mental, and spiritual development, right? Physical means a person who helps you to follow the sattvic ahara, who helps you to get onto this path, yogic path. And mentally, he teaches you sadhana, so that you get the mental and spiritual elevation. Excuse me. And a person is a sadhu who has more punya compared to you, whose net result is punya, that is much more than yours. So who has a positive influence on you. So you have to essentially get into the company of sadhu. So that satsanga is very, very important. Without the satsanga, you need this daily dose of motivation, right? Because of leading this animal life for ages, one is so engrossed in this material world that they forget what the true goal of life is, and that needs a reminder every day. So it is important that we have the company of sadhus, right? So you have to utilize every moment of your life in enjoying the company of sadhus. Because why should you do that? Because that will actually elevate you. Because the sadhus, who are the sadhus? The sadhus are those people who are engaged in the path of spirituality, the path of yogic life. They are doing sadhana, they're doing everything that is need to progress from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. By those sadhus are so attractive that when you go in their company, what happens is that their behavior attracts you so much, because they are always in this Brahma bhava. That behavior attracts you so much that you are motivated, you're more inclined to find out what they're doing, why they're doing, and you want to learn from them, because they're in the path of this Brahma bhava. Because these people are getting attracted to Parama Purusha, so they have the energy from Parama Purusha, they have this attraction from Parama Purusha, so they also become very attractive. So then what happens is, when you come in the company of the sadhus, what happens is you feel like, okay, I want to listen to what they are saying, because what they are saying actually elevates your mind, elevates your thoughts. You want to observe what they are doing, how they are living their life in the Brahma bhava. You want to learn all of those things, right? So automatically when you go in their company, then you become curious, right? Even though you have been leading pashu jivanam, but when you get into the company of sadhus, you become curious to know, okay, why they are doing like this, what they are doing like this. Oh, even can you lead a life even like this? Because those sadhus are leading a life of sacrifice. They are leading a life of doing seva for others, right? So when you come in their company, they are so attractive that automatically, by engaging in a discussion with them, by hearing what they say, your mind gets elevated, your thoughts get elevated. You also feel like doing what they're doing, because you also feel that, internally you also have the infinite desire, so you feel like I also should progress in that path. So that is why it is very, very important. We have to go to the sadhus. Then if you go to the sadhus, then what happens is that your progress is automatic. It starts, you find yourself, your mind starts getting elevated. Then if your mind, if you go to somebody and you find that your mind is not getting elevated, you're getting degrade, your mind is getting degraded, then you can understand that person was not a sadhu for you, right? If you go to a person and if your mind gets elevated by that person, right, you get motivated, then you can understand that person was a sadhu for you, right? By going into his company, you are actually got the physical, mental and spiritual development. That is your satsang. But then you go to somebody who is a durjana, that is a asatsang, and that leads to adogati, because what happens is that his papa is so predominant that you automatically fall. So satsangena bhavet muktihi asatsangeshu bandhanam. So if you are in the company of satsanga, then you get muktihi, and if you are in the company of asatsanga, in the company of durjana, then it is more bandhana. You actually fall down, you actually go back to that pasu jivana, you in fact even fall down. So asatsanga varjanam yat sa mudra parikirtita. So by avoiding this asatsang, the durjanas, right, the avoidance of the durjanas is called as the mudra sadhana, right? So in the company of the satsanga you get progress, in the company of asatsanga, durjana, you get bandhana, right? So therefore we have to give up the asatsanga, and that is actually called as mudra sadhana, giving up this asatsanga. Asatsanga is that we in life we interact with so many people and we get associated, we get we feel closeness with a lot of people, but a question is, are they all sadhus for you, right? So if you find, you have to identify of all those different associations I have in my life, who are the sadhus and who are asadhus, right? Which is a satsanga and which is the asatsanga. If you feel somebody is a asatsanga for you, right, they are actually making your mind degrade, then it is time to give up the company of that asatsanga. Right? Doing that, continuously getting rid of this, sacrificing this asatsanga, right? That is what is called as that is also a sadhana. That is also a sadhana. It is called as a mudra sadhana. So that is one thing I wanted to say. And the other thing is kuru punyam ahoratram, right? So the shloka that we saw in the beginning, it says kuru punyam ahoratram smara nityam anityatam, right? Kuru punyam ahoratram. Ahoratram means day and night. So we say that we have to do jagat hit, we have to work towards atma moksha and jagat hit, doing jagat hit. So how much of jagat hit should I do, right? Is a question, right? Okay, people do a small thing and they feel very proud about themselves. They say, oh, I did this, oh, I gave food to somebody, oh, I did that. They talk a lot about it. But how much of seva should you do, right? So it is said that we have to do seva ahoratram, day and night you have to engage in seva, right? So if for people who are having families, then they have a responsibility towards the family, and they also have a responsibility to the larger society. So they need to do the work that they're doing for their family, they have to do with that seva bhava. If I'm actually feeding my son, then I'm looking at my son as a Brahma Swarupa and I'm feeding him. So that is a seva. And when I'm doing, I should not only do the service to my family, but I also should do service to the society. So I cannot ignore the society. So I have to do seva for society. So with 24 hours of the day, you have to split between the seva for your family versus seva for the larger society. For a person who is fully dedicated to yogic life, such a person will be doing seva completely for the society, right? So we have to do seva all the time. So So what is actually punyam, right? Kuru punyam ahoratram. Do punya day and night. So what is actually a punyam, right? So Vyasa, who wrote the Puranas, right, he is saying that Ashtadasha Puraneshu Vyasasya Vachanadvayam, of the 18 Puranas that Vyasa wrote, his two statements are very predominant or very, very important. One is Paropakaraha Punyaya Papaya Parapidanam. So doing Paropakaraha is what is Punyam, right? Paropakaraha Punyam. You have to do Paropakaraha. You need to help somebody. You need to do Seva. Seva can be different types. We have talked about that before, right? So we can do different kinds of Seva, and doing that Seva is Paropakaraha. And if you are causing harm to somebody, right, that is Papa, right? So when you are engaged in doing some welfare work, then you are doing Punya. And when you are going against the public interest, right, you are harming somebody, then that is committing Papa. So we have to be engaged in Punya Karma 24 hours of the day, Ahoratram, day and night, sunrise to sunrise, right? So we have to be doing Punya Karma all the time. So how will we be doing the Punya Karma during night, right? Night we will be sleeping. So what it means is that during waking state we do the Punya Karma, right? Then what happens is that by doing that Punya Karma, more and more Punya Karma, you get a composure, you get peace in the night. So with that peace, what happens, in even while sleeping you are engaged in the Punya Karma, right? That whatever Punya Karma you do during the day, that spills over to the night, right? That is why it is said Ahoratram, day and night you have to do Punya Karma, right? So what at the end of it, what the summary is that we have to give up the company of Durjanas and associate with the sadhus, those who are elevating you on 3 levels, physical, mental and spiritual level, and then do punya, that is do seva. Seva is very important, a small thing, right? For instance, if you keep some grains for the bird, that is a seva, right? Every day if you keep a little bit of grains for the birds, that is a seva. If you keep some water for the birds, that is a seva, right? On the road, if you find somebody who is starving, if you feed them, that is a seva, right? Or if you teach somebody yogic life, that is a seva. That is a viprochit seva. It is permanent, because if you feed somebody, they will be hungry again. But when you enlighten them with these elevating thoughts, then you're doing a permanent seva, because it becomes life changing even for somebody, right? So these are all different kinds of sevas that one has to engage in. So we have to also remember smara nityam anityatam. Of all the things in this world, everything is anityam, right? Everything is kshanikam, everything is temporary. It is there today, it is not there tomorrow, right? So every object in this world keeps changing, right? Nothing is permanent. I have something today, tomorrow it is gone, right? I have a house today, tomorrow it is gone. I have a book today, tomorrow it is gone. Yeah, I have a book and I just like this book so much and I have kept it, and over a period of time slowly the book starts degrading and it's gone. It's not in the same shape it was few years back, right? So everything in this world keeps changing, so you always have to remember what is nitya and what is anitya. Nitya nitya vastu viveka is very important. Nitya nitya vastu viveka is very important. What is nitya, what is anitya? So when you keep remembering that, what happens is that you become engaged in the Brahma Bhava. You know that what is in front of me, the book that is in front of me is nothing but Brahma Swarupa, right? The computer that is in front of me is a Brahma Swarupa. So the person that is in front of me is Brahma Swarupa. That cat that is in front of me is a Brahma Swarupa. So you will know that, you will know how to apply this Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. So then what happens is you will not run after these material things, right? So sometimes, people go to the shop and they just buy clothes, right? So if you ask them why they're buying clothes, if you ask them, oh, you don't have clothes, that's why you're buying clothes, then they'll say, no, I have a lot of clothes, but I'm still buying. Why are you buying? Because I like it. So that means they're getting attracted by the object of the world. They're getting attracted by those, they're getting colored by those material things, right? So what is the need for you to buy something when you already have so many, right? So instead you could just buy it for somebody who doesn't have it, right? So that is a seva. So we always have to remember the nityam and nitya vastu and anitya vastu, and always engage in the thought of the nitya vastu, that is have the brahma bhava. So by doing all of this, what happens is that you get elevated, you get stabilized in the yogic path. These are all, why these are all important, because these all help you to get stabilized in the yogic path, right? Initially when you enter into this yogic path, and if you still get associated with durjanas, then you will fall from your path, right? You want to get stabilized in your yogic path. Everything that you have learned, you want to apply in your life. So that is why it is important to give up the durjana samsarga and associate yourself with the sadhus, and that will elevate your thoughts and help you progress from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. So that is what I wanted to talk today. So we can actually go back to our Karapatram. So we were actually reading what is my relation with the universe and the cosmic entity. So that is what we were reading. Right before we go there, anybody has any thoughts or comments? Okay. So then we'll go to the Karapatra. What is my relation with the universe and the cosmic entity? So we said that, we have the Nirguna Purusha and the Nirguna Brahma and the Saguna Brahma. In the Nirguna Brahma, Prakriti is there, her gunas are also there. But what happens is that in the Nirguna Avastha, the gunas of the Prakriti, the three gunas of the Prakriti, Sattva Guna, Rajoguna and Tamoguna. So what happens in that state is that Sattva Guna gets converted into Rajoguna, Rajoguna gets converted into Tamoguna, Tamoguna gets converted into Sattva Guna. So they keep going in the circle. And the gunas are all in balance. And when the gunas are all in balance, then those gunas do not influence the Purusha. So that is the Nirguna Avastha. In the Nirguna Avastha also gunas are there, but the Prakriti's gunas do not influence the Purusha because they are in Prama, they are in balanced state. But in the Saguna Avastha, what happens is that these gunas, this is a triangle of forces, right? These gunas from Sattvam to Rajoguna, Rajoguna to Tamoguna, when they are going, when one is getting converted to the other and they are all in balance, but suddenly there becomes an imbalance in one of the vertices. This is when the Purusha gives permission, right? Purusha, he decides that Ekoham Bahusyam. He thinks that I am one, I want to become many, and he gives the permission to Prakriti. Then what happens is that the gunas from one of the vertices start influencing the Purusha. The Sattva Guna of Prakriti influences Purusha, and we get the Mahat Tattva, and then the Rajoguna of Prakriti influences the Mahat Tattvam, and we get the Aham Tattva, and then the Tamoguna of Prakriti influences the Aham Tattva, we get the Chitta, the three components of the cosmic mind come into being, and that state is actually the Saguna state, where the gunas influence the Purusha. So the Saguna Brahma, we call the Saguna Brahma as Ishvara, as Bhagavan, right? So when we are a Jivatma, right? So the Jivatma is under bondage, due to the influence of Prakriti, and the Jivatma can attain the Nirguna Avastha. It can attain the Nirguna Avastha when it is released from the bondage of Prakriti, right? When the Jivatma gets released from the bondage of Prakriti, it merges with the Nirguna Purusha, right? So in the Jivatma, there is this Jiva and there is this Atma, right? Jivatma. So this Jivatma is actually a Sakshi Satta, right? So if there is a person called as Rama, right? Let's say that Jivatma is Rama, and the Jivatma now assumes it assumes a role. Let's say that it is assuming a role of Shah Jahan, right? Then that Shah Jahan, he has this role and he plays that role. And this Rama, which is the Jivatma, it just watches whatever Shah Jahan is doing, right? So whatever Shah Jahan is doing, whatever actions Shah Jahan is doing, right, the Rama is not responsible for that. Shah Jahan is responsible. He is the one who is doing all of those actions, and he will actually bear the fruits of that action, right? Rama is only a witnessing entity. So like that, this Jivatma, right? So there is a person called as, let's say there is a person called as Shyama, right? And he has a Jivatma, and Shyama, that is, he has this unit mind. He has the Mahatattvam, Aham Tattvam, and Chitta. He has this feeling of I, right? He has this Mahatattvam, which is the feeling of I, and because of that feeling of I, he engages in different actions, right? The Rama, which is the Jivatma, is just watching all of those actions. It is not, Jivatma is not responsible for any of those actions. It is that Mahatattvam, the mind, which is responsible for all of those actions due to the influence of Prakriti. It is due to the influence of Prakriti. So how do we go back to that original state? How do we go to the Nirguna Avastha? We go to that Nirguna Avastha only when that unit consciousness gets the freedom from the bondage of Prakriti, right? So it is this feeling of I. It is this feeling of I, the Mahatattvam, which is the barrier for us to reach the Nirguna state, right? Which is this feeling of I, which keeps the unit consciousness or the Atma from attaining the Nirguna Avastha, right? So essentially the mind is nothing but it is a modified form of consciousness, right? So mind is nothing but a modified form of consciousness, and it is that mind which is responsible for all of the actions performed, right? And this Jivatma is just watching all of those actions performed. So the Jivatma is neither the Karta nor it is the Bhokta, right? Jivatma neither performs any actions nor experiences any results. It is only a witnessing counterpart. It just witnesses the actions which are performed by the mind, right? So much we have covered in the prior class. So now we'll continue further from there. Okay, Chandrasekhar Moria, do you want to take this paragraph?
Sure, Bharini. In the first chapter, it was said that unit consciousness is the knowing entity. It can be appreciated as the knowing or witnessing entity only, and a human being's feeling of I is the other entity which creates in humans the knowledge of existence and also establishes their existence. Unit consciousness always remains a witnessing entity, and any action performed by the I entity has no effect on it. A witnessing or knowing entity need not be the performer of any action, and hence the status of unit consciousness remains unchanged as witnessing entity only. Only the one who sows shall reap. Hence, only the entity termed as the feeling of I will experience the results of all actions, as this feeling is the originator of all actions. The witnessing entity or the knowing entity remains only a spectator without experiencing any results, as it does not work. For example, Rama witnesses a football match will never get any credit for winning the match. Only the player Shyama will be called the winner. It is the actual player, Shyama, who will win or lose the game, and he alone will feel fatigued as a result of his playing. Rama, who is only a spectator, will neither win or lose, nor will he feel exhausted or tired. Rama, the spectator, and see Shyama exhausted as a result of his. Rama, the spectator, will witness the play and also the result of the actions. He will only know the result of the match and see Shyama exhausted as a result of his playing the game. Similarly, unit consciousness or Atman is a spectator witnessing all the actions performed by human beings and the results experienced by them. It does not perform any action and hence does not experience the result. Unit consciousness or Atman is only a witness force, the all-knowing entity. So in this paragraph, it's defining or clarifying the distinction between unit consciousness and the other entity, or the feeling of I and the actions. The unit consciousness is a witness, is a sakshipakshi. It's just a witness or the knowing entity. It does not do the action. The actions are not associated to the unit consciousness because the unit consciousness doesn't do the actions. It's just a witness. The actions are done by the entity that feels I. The I entity does the actions, and therefore the I entity also enjoys the results or suffers with the results, whatever that is. Basically, it experiences the results. The unit consciousness doesn't experience the results because it's just a witness. The I entity experiences the results because it's the one that's doing action, and therefore it's the one that's reaping all the results of the actions, good or bad. Then the paragraph goes on to put an example or to explain the distinction, where if Rama, who's a spectator, watches Shyama, who's the player, and then when the game, win or lose, it's Shyama who's going to experience the results. Rama, who just witnessed the game, doesn't experience the joy or sorrow of the win or lose. Similarly, also Rama doesn't feel tired, doesn't feel the effect of the game running all over, whereas Shyama would feel the result of running or result of the action of the game, getting exhausted and tired at the end. So it's equating then the Rama, who is a witness, is similar to the unit consciousness, which is a witness, and Shyama, who is the actor, is similar to the I, the field entity that has the I feeling, that the individual Mahat Tattva, Aham Tattva, and all that together is that I. And that's the distinction between the unit consciousness. Again, we call it as Atman, which is a witnessing force, and the action is done by the the I entity, the entity that feels I. And so they're clarifying with examples here in this paragraph.
Yes, Nadia, nicely explained. Yeah. So I think the concept is actually clear, right? So if you think that Paramapurusha is a flower, right? Let's think Paramapurusha is a flower and is in the center, and it is surrounded by 100 mirrors, right? 100 mirrors. And Paramapurusha, which is the flower, is getting reflected into these 100 mirrors, right? And these mirrors are the mind, right? The mirrors are the mind, and the flower, which is Paramapurusha, is getting reflected on the mirror, which is the mind, right? So this reflection of the flower, this reflection doesn't do anything, right? It is just there. It is just watching whatever this mirror is doing, right? Whatever this mirror is doing, this flower is just watching. Like that, this Jivatma, right? This Jivatma, which is the reflection of the flower, is only a witnessing entity, and it does not do any action, nor it experience the result of the action, right? That is what is given in this example of Rama and Shyama, which is very clear. Rama is just watching the game, is watching the football match, and Shyama is the one who is playing, right? Shyama is the one who is deciding how I want to hit the ball, what I want to do. He is the one who is deciding and is doing all of those things, and Rama is just watching. And if Shyama wins, then also Rama will watch, and Shyama loses, then also Rama will watch. And Shyama is the one who gets affected. If he wins the game, he's called a winner, and if he loses the game, he is a loser, and Rama just watches that, right? So it's very important to understand that Jivatma is not a bogi, is not a karta, is not a bhokta, is not a bhokta. He's just a sakshi satta. He's just a sakshi satta, and that point is very important to remember, that the Jivatma it does not bear the result of any action, right? That is important point that we need to remember. And actually that point is not clearly explained in other philosophies. It becomes confusing. Yeah, it's actually in fact misinterpreted in several shastras. Okay, we can actually go to the next paragraph. Shubham Bhagni, do you want to take this?
Yes, Bhagini. The human being's feeling of I is Buddhi Tattva. This I gives the idea of the knowledge of existence. It doesn't give any idea of performing an action. Mere feeling of existence doesn't indicate that I performs any action. And so it is not Buddhi Tattva which acts. It has been said in the first chapter that Aham Tattva, which comes into being as a result of the qualifying influence of Prakriti on Buddhi Tattva, is the part of mind that works. Aham Tattva, ego, is not Buddhi Tattva, as the former is formed from the latter. It is cruder manifestation
Formed from the
of
latter,
Buddhi Tattva.
not later. Latter,
Later.
not later. Latter.
Later. Okay. It is a cruder manifestation of Buddhi Tattva. It is Aham Tattva, ego, which works, and this it is this only which experience the result of actions, results of action. Buddhi Tattva, which is a distinctly separate entity from Aham Tattva and is merely a pure feeling of I, doesn't perform any action, and hence should not experience the result of actions. On serious reflection, however, no action appears possible without the feeling of I or knowledge of existence being there, or who else would make Aham Tattva work? It is the feeling of I and the knowledge of existence which inspires Aham Tattva to work. This it is seen that Buddhi Tattva does not actually perform any action, yet it is because of the knowledge of existence and knowledge of existence and feeling of I provided by it that a person is able to work through his or her Aham Tattva. The feeling of I is therefore related to the performance of actions, and in this way related to results of actions also. To illustrate this, we can take an example of two landlords whose dispute result in the free fighting of their people. As a result of this fight, the actual fighter, that is, the landlord's man, will be injured or may even die, but the landlords will remain apparently unaffected. Yet the landlords are responsible for the fight as it was started through their instigating the people. Hence, apparently, apparently the person who works is directly affected, but in fact the landlords are the person who will indirectly experience the results of fighting among their men. They alone will be the winner or loser. Similarly, Bhuyatatva is also indirectly directly related to results of actions performed by Aham Tattva, although the actual performer of action is Aham Tattva, which apparently bears the consequence of actions. Uh, in this paragraph, it is saying that feeling of I is Buddhi Tattva, and that
We will say this I as Mahat Tattva instead of Buddhi Tattva. Everywhere we'll say Mahat Tattva.
Yes, Bhagini, Aham Tattva, Mahat Tattva. So,
Mahat Tattva, Aham Tattva. Instead of Buddhi Tattva, we'll say Mahat Tattva.
okay. The I gives the idea of knowledge of existence. It does not give an idea of performing an action. So in Mahat Tattva, it is like the feeling of I, and in Aham Tattva, it is like I do. So when we are at the stage of Mahat Tattva, then only the feeling of I, not any feeling of I do or any actions. So this line means that only it doesn't give an idea of performing an action, because now at the stage of Mahat Tattva we only have the feeling of I, and the next line is saying that only the feeling of I, mere feeling of existence, does not indicate that I performs any action, and it is not Bodhisattva which acts. That only the feeling of I doesn't perform any actions, and in first chapter we studied that Aham Tattva, which comes as a result when Prakriti act on Mahat Tattva, that only perform the actions. Aham Tattva is not Buddhi Tattva or Mahat Tattva, as the former is formed from the latter. The Aham Tattva is formed from Buddhi Tattva. So it is saying that Aham Tattva is not Mahat Tattva, as the former is Mahat Tattva, is formed from the latter. Latter I think is Sagun Purusha only.
No, latter means from the Buddhi Tattva. Aham Tattva is the former and Buddhi Tattva is the latter. Aham Tattva is formed from the latter means Aham Tattva is formed from the Buddhi Tattva.
Bhagini, former is beginner, na? That comes first before.
No, here in this context, Aham Tattva is not Buddhi Tattva, as the former is formed from the latter. Aham Tattva is formed from the Buddhi Tattva. It is a cruder manifestation of Buddhi Tattva.
Okay. It is Aham Tattva which works, and it is this only which experience the result of actions. So till now it is saying that Mahat Tattva is only feeling of I, and Aham Tattva is something of like actions, and because Aham Tattva performs action, so it is only one who experience the result of actions. That Mahat Tattva, which is distinctly separate entity from Aham Tattva. And Mahatattva is separate from Aham Tattva and only feeling of I and doesn't perform any action, so it also doesn't experience any results. On serious reflection, however, no action appears possible without the feeling of I or the knowledge of existence being there. And then it is saying that if there is not Mahatattva or Bodhitattva, then who will make Aham Tattva work? If there is no feeling of I, then how will anyone like Aham Tattva will perform actions? That Bodhitattva or Mahatattva is feeling of I, and that knowledge of existence, the feeling of I, inspire Aham Tattva to work. Thus it is seen that Bodhitattva doesn't actually perform any action, yet it is because the knowledge of existence and feeling of I provided by it that a person is able to work through his or Aham Tattva. So it is saying that Mahatattva doesn't work directly, but it provides a feeling of I that by which Aham Tattva is able to perform the actions. Therefore, the feeling of I is also related to performance of actions and also related to results of action. So here is also giving an example of two landlords in which a dispute is there. So their people start fighting, and as a result, the result of this fight, the actual fighters, that are their man or servant, will be injured or maybe one die, but that landlord remain unaffected. But the responsible are landlord only because they only wanted to fight, and that was their dispute only. Hence we can say that the person who works is directly affected, but the person who are like responsible landlords, they will also indirectly experience the result of fights among their men. They will like winner or loser. Similarly, Bodhitattva is also not directly related to result of actions performed by Aham Tattva, although it is the actual performer of actions and it have to bear the consequences of actions. As a summary, it is like since Mahatattva is only feeling of I and doesn't perform any action, only Aham Tattva performs action, so we cannot say that the result of actions will only suffer by Aham Tattva. Indirectly, that Mahatattva provides a feeling of I or some base upon which Aham Tattva work or actions. So indirectly, Mahatattva or Bodhitattva will also bear the consequences.
Nicely explained, Bagni. Thank you so much. That was really nice. So yeah, that is the idea over here, that that Aham Tattva has the apparent doership and the Buddhi Tattva, the Mahatattva remains unaffected, right? But the reality is that similar to how the landlords or the owners, although they are not directly holding the guns and tools of fighting in their hands, but they own the land and they are ultimately the winners or the losers in the battle, right? So similarly, this small I feeling, when we talk about being somebody who is the doer of an action, ultimately that it is the responsibility of the I feeling, right? Ultimate responsibility is with the I feeling, uh, so when we look at the animals and plants, they are not the doers of their actions, right? Because they do not have a fully developed mahatattva, that is the I feeling. They are not aware of their existence. They do not consciously make decisions to take actions that they take, right? They have sahajat vritti. They have inborn instincts, and their doer is actually the prakriti. Prakriti is the doer of actions in animals via their sahajat vritti, the inborn instincts. The animals are not doers of their actions. That is why, when a monkey comes onto the roof of somebody's house and steals bananas, they cannot be put in jail for that. They do not understand. They do not know. They are not thieves, right? They are operating according to the design of Prakriti. They took the bananas due to their inborn instinct, which is the guidance of Prakriti. So whereas human beings, when they climb up the roof and steal bananas, they are thieves, because knowingly, because it is that I feeling which actually gives them the realization, the awareness of their existence. So in the case of the animals, the aham tattva is not accompanied by that developed mahat tattvam, and because of that they are not the doers of the actions, whereas the human beings are the doers of the actions. That is actually the difference between a critical difference between human beings and animals. Human beings are responsible for their actions, whereas animals are not responsible for their actions. They are doing according to their design. So even though the mahatattva is just watching the actions being done, but it is responsible. It is because of this I feeling that a person, the mahatattva, is getting is engaging in the action. Without that I feeling, without this I feeling, this aham tattva cannot engage in action, right? So the I feeling is also, the small I feeling is also responsible for the action, responsible for the result of the action, good or bad. Okay, so we can actually go further to the next paragraph. Pushpalata Bhagini, do you want to take it?
Bhagini, namaskaraha.
Namaskara.
The chitta comes into being as a result of the qualifying influence of the static principles of Prakriti on Aham Tattva was explained in the first chapter. It is thus Aham Tattva which manifests itself in a cruder form as Chitta. The results of action performed by Aham Tattva are formed in Chitta. It was explained in detail in the first chapter that Chitta assumes the form of the actions of Buddhi Tattva and Aham Tattva with the help of 10 organs, Indriyas. For instance, Chitta itself has to become like a book in order to enable Aham Tattva to see a book. The same applies in order to listen to a sound. Chitta is a crude manifestation of Aham Tattva, which itself is a manifestation of Buddhi Tattva. Chitta hence is the crudest portion of Buddhi Tattva and is not capable of independent action. Any independent action by a conscious entity is not tolerated by Prakriti, which tries to go against each of the person's independent actions. As the reflection of consciousness is complete in human beings, they are able to realize their bondage and they try to defy the authority of Prakriti. In this effort to overcome the influence of Prakriti, human beings work against her designs, and Prakriti in her turn goes against human beings' efforts in order to maintain her domination over them. A person's actions therefore are inspired by his or her consciousness in order to break away from the bondage of Prakriti, and the results that they experience are the reactions inflicted by Prakriti to keep them under bondage. So the next paragraph says that the Chitta, just go a little up. The Chitta came into a result of the qualifying influence of the Prakriti on the Aham Tattva. So now the Aham Tattva manifests itself in the crudest form, and that is the Chitta. The results of the actions performed by the Aham Tattva are formed in Chitta. So now we have seen earlier itself that Chitta takes this form of action, or takes the form of the forms as given by forms the actions of Mahatattva and Aham Tattva with the help of the 10 organs or the Indriyas. For example, to read a book, the Chitta assumes the form of a book, and the action of reading enabled by Aham Tattva, we can read the book. The same applies to listen to a sound. So Chitta is the crudest form, and it is the crude manifestation of Aham Tattva, and which is also a manifestation of the Mahatattva, the Buddhi Tattva. So Chitta is the crudest form of Mahatattva or Buddhi Tattva, which is not capable of independent action. Any independent action taken by a conscious entity is not tolerated by Prakriti, and which tries to go against each of a person's independent action. So as a result of consciousness, as the reflection of consciousness is complete in human beings, they also are able to realize their bondage, and they try to defy the authority of the Prakriti. So in order to what they do, in this effort to overcome the influence of Prakriti, the human beings work against the disease, against the designs of the Prakriti, and Prakriti, which does not allow such this one, goes against human beings' efforts in order to maintain her domination over them. So a person's action therefore are inspired by his or her consciousness, and in order to break away from the designs of Prakriti, and the results they experience or the reactions influenced by the Prakriti, to keep them under our bondage. So it is, though the Prakriti has given the full freedom to the consciousness of the human beings, it keeps them under her influence so that they don't go against her wishes. This is what is explained in this paragraph.
Yes, Pragni, nicely said. Thank you so much. So yeah, that is the idea over here. So this paragraph is a transitional paragraph which is introducing the concept of karmapala, right? That notion that every action has a reaction, right? And that is the Prakriti's way of dealing with free will, which human beings have, right? Human beings have the swatantra ichcha, right? Whether we want to follow the Pashu dharma or Manava dharma, we have the swatantra ichcha, and no other living beings have this karmapala, this concept of karmapala, reaction to their action, right? The relationship between the karma and karmapala, right? And this relationship between karma and karmapala is only unique to the human beings, right? In other beings, the other beings, they are not the doers of their actions, right? So they do not accumulate any karmapala. So this karmapala is the way, right? For every action there is a reaction, for every action there is a karmapala, right? Any action, good or bad, there is a karmapala for that action, and this is the way in which Prakriti is managing the universe, right? So when an elephant or a deer or another animal dies, they don't have any reactions to their previous actions that forced rebirth, right? They are in bondage as a result of Prakriti, and because of that they take a new birth, right? They're not taking a new birth because of the previous karma pala. But the human being situation is rather unique, right? And this paragraph is actually introducing that concept that chitta takes the form of the actions of aham tattva, right? So we will see how all this works in the following paragraph. But human beings, every time they do an action, there is going to be a reaction to that action as a part of this whole karma and karma pala concept. And because the human beings have the swatantra ichha, they are the doers of the action, and they are going to be the experiencer of that reaction, and that reaction will happen on the chitta. So this is the way in which Prakriti maintains this universe, manages this universe. If there was no reaction to the actions, then there would be no way of forcing rebirth, right? So the human beings remain in this net, this very, very tight web of actions and reactions, right, as a result of the laws created by Prakriti. So, and all of these reactions happen on the chitta. But the main thing over here is that so long as one identifies oneself with the feeling of small I, right, that is how most of us act, right, then what happens is that they will be incurring karma palas. So every time we do an action, our small I is involved, right? So in most likely in everybody's case, that is how it is. When we do an action, our small I is involved and we get the reaction. But a person who has spiritual realization, who has anubhuti, for him it doesn't work like that, and that anubhuti happens through sadhana. So the main thing to take away from this entire thing is that in order to move beyond the small I, means we have to get attracted to something else. Otherwise this small I becomes so dear and near to us, right? People love their small I, they love their I feeling. They do they spend their entire life in serving that small I, trying to show the world how they are very great, right? This is how everybody lives, like protecting their small I, glorifying the small I. So the only way of getting beyond this small I is through the yogic life. There is no other way, right? By doing sadhana. This is the path of manava dharma. It is the path, it is through the practice of yoga and sadhana, right? All the yoga angas, gradually you get transformation of becoming more attracted to the big I than to the small I. So that is actually the solution. Just like the baby with the car keys. If the baby gets a better toy, mother gave the baby a better toy, then the baby will drop the car keys and it will grab the better toy, right? So that is the best thing in life. So the best thing in life is Parama Purusha. So one has to get experience with that, right? One has to experience with Parama Purusha, get that anubhuti in sadhana, right? So the mind doesn't have a shape of its own. It takes the shape of whatever it is thinking, right? So if one is thinking about Parama Purusha, then mind becomes like that. Then slowly when you're engaging in sadhana and mind is taking the shape of Parama Purusha, slowly our small I feeling keeps reducing and the big I feeling keeps increasing. So then eventually the small I feeling will be completely merged into the big I, and at that point in time when any action is being performed, one will not incur any karma pala, because one is not having that small I feeling when doing that action. So therefore they will not be incurring any karma pala. They will be doing the action as yantras of Parama Purusha, as hands and legs of Parama Purusha, and in such a circumstance they will not be incurring any karma pala. So that is how it's a beautiful concept of how you get rid of this samsara chakra. Okay, any question or thoughts on this? Okay, we'll just take the last paragraph. Chandrasekhar Mohdaya, do you want to take this?
Sure, Mahodaya. Let us now see how an action is executed and why one has to bear the consequence in the form of reaction. Every action originates in and is performed by the mind, that is, by its three components, the Mahatattva, Ahamtattva, and Chitta. It was explained earlier that Chitta has to take the form or become the result of any action performed by a human being. This would mean that Chitta leaves its normal form and is metamorphosed into the form of the result of an action. For instance, Chitta has to become a book to be able to see a book. A person's mind has to leave its normal form and become deformed in order to complete the execution of an action. The creation and the existence of mind are due to the influence of Prakriti on consciousness, and when consciousness disrupts the normal status of mind by inspiring it to work, it is not tolerated by Prakriti. Prakriti, being the dominating factor, causes a reaction to every action and brings the mind back to its former status. This is called karmapala. Thus, karmapala is a manifestation of Mahatattva and the feeling of I are the same entity. It is therefore a human being's feeling of I, only which, on becoming crude, is transformed into Chitta. We have seen that a book can only be seen when Chitta becomes like a book, as Chitta is a transformation of the feeling of I. It is in fact a human being's feeling of I which becomes like a book, and it's not a book that one sees. It is one's own transformed self that one sees a book. It is that transformed feeling of I known as Chitta, which on grasping the ideatory vibration of the nerves creating form, Rupa Tanmatra, becomes a book itself. To hear a sound, one has to become sound itself. Thus, human beings themselves become the result of their actions, and whatever one sees, feels, hears, touches, or smells is their own feeling of I, or their own transformed self. So, in this paragraph, what it's trying to say is everything, the reality is really what the mind feels. The mind has to be. There's no book outside. The mind becomes the book. There's no sound outside. The mind becomes that sound. That is, without everything that the world we perceive, all the perceptions are really because of the mind. Even though we see it outside, but it's everything is the mind transforms into that perception. The mind transforms into a book. The mind, again, in this case, even though I called it loosely as mind, being very this thing and saying the Chitta becomes the book, the Chitta becomes the sound, the Chitta becomes the taste, and the Chitta everything is due to the mind. And so then in that the karmapala is the result of the mind is because of what that transformation that the Chitta goes through, saying that that's the result of the karmapala is that you have to, all that perception and the transformation that the mind goes through is what this paragraph calls it as karmapala, and it's trying to bring in that the Prakriti is not interested in the mind not acting. I mean, is that not experiencing the karma phala. So prakriti is not because if we abolish that drive to do any action, if we don't associate and think that that the Mahat Tattva, Aham Tattva, and Chitta together are the ones that are doing the action, so then we wouldn't be getting the karma phala, because we're just saying we are akartas, so we don't do kartas, so we don't do the karmas, so we don't get the karma phalas. So prakriti is not in line with what prakriti wants to do. Wants that individual jivatma to be. So it's trying to influence that to feel the karma phala, and that, so it essentially is trying to say that the prakriti is causing the karma phala, and is causing one to enjoy that karma phala, the results of action, just so you don't disassociate with the karma itself. Does that?
Yeah. Okay, nicely said. Yeah. So that is actually the idea. So the basic point is that in contrast to animals, the animals have no self-awareness, right? They have no awareness that they exist. They have no awareness that they are doing an action. So therefore, they're just doing according to the design of Prakriti. So therefore, they are not the doers of their actions. Prakriti is the doer of their actions via the inborn instincts. But in contrast to that, human beings have self-awareness. We have this Swatantra Ichcha. They have self-awareness as they exist. They feel and they know that they are doing the actions. And they are in fact the doers of their actions as a result of that. So when they see something, when they want to do something, their mind ideates on those things and their chitta takes the form of that as a result of the inspiration from the I feeling, right, to do that karma. So we know we have three components of mind which are functional forms of the same I, that I feeling, the doer I and the done I. All are the functional forms of the same I. So they're all working together in cooperation, and chitta is actually a cruder form of that very I feeling. So that I is constantly taking the shape of whatever it thinks about, and the Prakriti in reaction, right, it gives us the reaction. So we can think of this mind as a rubber ball. Think of the mind as a rubber ball. It gets indented by a finger, is always pushing it to come back to its original shape. If you just put a dent on the ball, you press the ball with your finger, there is a dent, and then if you remove your finger, it just comes back to the original shape. So there is always a push and pull going on continuously, and this is the play of karma and the karma phala, right? It continues throughout the whole life, because every minute we keep doing an action, right? Any action we do, right, the karma phala, there is a karma phala for that action, and that karma phala may not result immediately, but it keeps accumulating. It gets stored up, and those all things take shape in various ways and forms. It doesn't have to be the exact opposite or the exact amount. It all depends on how much time it has been since the action was taken, the original action, what is the original intention. Many factors go into it, right? Some actions may not be intentional, some may be intentional. So we are talking about the intentional actions, the things that we are doing knowingly, intentionally. Those things create deformation in the chitta, just like an indentation on the ball. Like that, these things, the actions that we do knowingly, they create a deformation on the chitta, and the potential reaction to the deformation, just like a finger indenting a rubber ball, that ball is going to push back at some point in time. It's going to come back to its original shape, right? So it may not push back right away, but it is going to push back at some point. That is what is the karma pala. The karma pala makes the ball to take its original shape at some point in time. So these karma pala are stored potential reactions. So those are what we call as the samskaras. Right? These potential karma palas are called as samskara. So the karma pala, if it doesn't express immediately, right, it may express later on in the same janma, or it might be in a different janma, and then the potential reaction is going to express at some point. It is called as the samskara. And so we are going to be talking about all of this in the following paragraph. So there is a process in which this whole thing happens, right? So when we do an action, the mind, the chitta takes the shape of that action, and there's a deformation, and you have a karma pala by which the deformation is removed. And that karma pala may be in this birth, or maybe in later on birth. It keeps getting accumulated as samskaras. Okay. Any questions or thoughts on this? Okay, so we will actually stop. We will conclude the session over here. धन्यवादः, नमस्कारः.
धन्यवादः, नमस्कारः.
नमस्कारः.